The luxurious Bentley Continental GT glided smoothly into the parking lot of AutoCare, the premium garage. Olivia Morgan sighed, adjusting her Dior sunglasses on the bridge of her nose. Normally, her assistant would handle the car maintenance, but today he had a family emergency. "Mom, will we be here long?" Lily asked, her eyes wandering around the unfamiliar space filled with the scent of oil. As they stepped inside, the little girl suddenly froze, her gaze fixed on the man leaning over the open hood of a Lexus. Before Olivia could react, Lily darted forward, her clear voice ringing out. "Daddy!" The call silenced the entire garage. Jack Bennett slowly raised his head, his stunned eyes meeting Olivia's after 9 years apart. Tyler, Jack's 9-year-old son, jolted upright from his corner of the waiting area, looking at the unfamiliar child with confused eyes. Olivia rushed forward, her Louboutin heels clicking rapidly against the polished concrete floor. "Lily!" she called, her voice strained as she attempted to maintain composure. The color had drained from her face, leaving her complexion almost as pale as her cream silk blouse. She reached for her daughter's shoulder, pulling her back gently while offering an apologetic smile to the bewildered mechanic. "I'm so sorry," she began, the words tumbling out too quickly. "She must have mistaken you for someone else." But Lily was not to be deterred. The 8-year-old shook her head vigorously, her chestnut curls bouncing around her small face. "No, Mom. That's him. That's the man in the picture you keep in your drawer." The silence in the garage deepened, punctuated only by the distant sound of tools clattering as another mechanic fumbled, clearly distracted by the unfolding drama. Jack wiped his hands slowly on a rag, leaving streaks of oil that matched the ones on his faded jeans. His eyes never left Olivia's face, searching for something. Recognition, explanation, perhaps both. "Olivia," he finally said, his voice lower than she remembered, roughened by time and circumstance. "Is that really you?" Tyler had abandoned his science book entirely now, cautiously approaching his father's side with the wariness of a child who had seen too many unexpected changes in his young life. Jack placed a protective hand on his son's shoulder, a gesture that wasn't lost on Olivia. Her eyes flickered between father and son, noting the similarities, the same strong jawline, the same thoughtful eyes, before returning to Jack's face. "Perhaps we should talk somewhere more private," she suggested, her professional tone at odds with the trembling of her hands as she clutched her designer handbag. The garage manager, sensing the tension, quickly offered his office, ushering them away from curious eyes. As they walked, Olivia felt as though she were moving through a dream, the fluorescent lights overhead casting everything in a surreal glow. 9 years had passed since that weekend in Chicago, 9 years in which she had built a life, raised a child, and risen to the pinnacle of her profession, all while keeping the secret of Lily's paternity locked away like a precious, dangerous artifact. The manager's office was small but orderly, with certificates of mechanical excellence hanging on the walls alongside vintage car posters. Jack asked Tyler to wait outside with Lily, entrusting an apprentice mechanic to keep an eye on them. The boy had resisted initially, his eyes darting suspiciously between his father and this strange woman in expensive clothes, but eventually relented when Jack promised a full explanation later. Now, seated across from each other in the cramped space, Jack and Olivia regarded one another with a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension. 9 years, Jack said, breaking the silence first. "You look exactly the same." Olivia managed a small, tight smile, though inside she felt anything but composed. "You don't," she replied honestly. "You've changed," and he had. The ambitious young engineer she'd met at the conference had been replaced by a man with deeper lines around his eyes, stronger hands, and an air of hard-won contentment that the younger Jack had lacked. "Life will do that," he acknowledged with a half-smile before his expression turned serious again. "Lily is she." Olivia took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation she had rehearsed in her mind countless times but never expected to actually have. "Yes," she said simply, "she's your daughter." The words hung in the air between them, weighty and transformative. Jack leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair in a gesture Olivia remembered from their brief time together. "How?" he began, then shook his head. "I mean, I know how, but why didn't you tell me?" Olivia's hands tightened around her purse. "You were married, Jack. Your wife was pregnant. And after that weekend, you disappeared, changed jobs, moved cities. When I found out I was expecting, I tried to find you, but it was like you'd vanished. Jack's expression shifted from confusion to understanding, then to something like guilt. Sarah was 7 months pregnant with Tyler when the conference happened, he confirmed quietly. And 2 years later, she was killed in a car accident. I left my engineering career to focus on raising Tyler, ended up here. He gestured vaguely at the garage around them. I had no idea you were looking for me. The revelation hung between them, heavy with implications. Outside the office window, they could see their children in the waiting area, strangers to each other yet connected by blood, by a past neither of them had been aware of until this moment. Lily was chattering animatedly, showing Tyler something on her tablet, while the boy listened with guarded interest. "She looks like you," Jack observed, his voice thick with emotion. Around the eyes, Olivia nodded, her throat tight. "She has your aptitude for mechanical things, too. She's always taking apart her toys to see how they work." A small smile tugged at Jack's lips, pride mixing with regret for all the moments he had missed. "I want to know her, Olivia," he said finally, his voice steady and determined. "I want to be part of her life." Olivia had anticipated this, had feared it, and, in some secret corner of her heart, perhaps hoped for it as well. "It's complicated," she began, but Jack interrupted her. "Life is complicated," he said firmly, "but she's my daughter, and nothing about that is complicated to me." The days that followed were a delicate negotiation of boundaries and expectations. They agreed to start slowly, with casual meetings where the children could get to know each other before the full truth was revealed. Their first dinner together was at Jack's apartment, a modest 2-bedroom unit in a solidly middle-class neighborhood that Olivia had driven past countless times without a second glance. The apartment was smaller than Lily's playroom alone, but it was immaculately kept, with bookshelves overflowing with engineering texts and mechanical journals. Model cars and robots lined Tyler's bedroom shelves, evidence of a childhood nurtured on curiosity and creativity rather than expensive toys. Lily had wandered the space with wide-eyed fascination, running her fingers over the spines of books and examining the collection of vintage spark plugs Jack kept in a glass case. "You fix cars?" she had asked, looking up at him with his own blue eyes. Jack had smiled, crouching down to her level. "I used to design them, now I fix them when they break." Lily had nodded, accepting this explanation with the simple logic of childhood. "That's important too," she declared. "Mom always says fixing things is harder than making new ones." Tyler, however, remained on the periphery of these interactions, watching with guarded eyes as his father engaged with this strange girl who had appeared from nowhere. At 9 years old, Tyler had already experienced more loss than many adults, and his protective instincts toward his father were strong. During dinner, he had answered Olivia's questions politely but briefly, his eyes constantly darting to his father for reassurance. When Lily had excitedly asked to see Tyler's room, the boy had hesitated, looking to Jack before reluctantly agreeing. "Don't touch anything," he'd warned as he led Lily down the hallway. Jack had watched them go with a mixture of hope and concern. "He'll come around," Olivia had offered quietly. "This is a lot for any child to process." Jack had nodded, but the worry remained in his eyes. "He's been through so much already," he'd replied. "I don't want him to feel like he's being replaced." The true challenges began when Jack and Olivia decided it was time to tell the children the complete truth. They gathered in Olivia's spacious penthouse living room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline, a vista that seemed to emphasize the vast differences between their worlds. Lily had bounced excitedly on the plush sofa, already comfortable with Jack's presence after several meetings. Tyler sat stiffly beside his father, his small face serious beyond his years. "We have something important to tell you both," Jack began, his voice gentle but firm. He explained in simple terms how he and Olivia had met years ago, before Tyler was born, before Lily existed. He spoke of choices and circumstances, of lives taking different paths, never realizing that those paths had created a connection between them all. "Lily," he said finally, looking directly at the little girl who had recognized him so instantly in the garage, "I am your father." And Tyler, he turned to his son, whose face had grown increasingly pale. "Lily is your half-sister." The silence that followed was broken by Lily's delighted squeal. "I knew it," she exclaimed, launching herself at Jack with the uninhibited joy of a child who had just had a wish granted. "I told Mom it was you in the picture." Tyler, however, had pulled away from his father's side, his small body rigid with betrayal. "You had another kid, and you never told me?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Do you love her more because she's rich?" The question hung in the air, raw and heartbreaking in its childish directness. Jack reached for his son, but Tyler dodged his hand, standing up with fists clenched at his sides. "Tyler, no," Jack said firmly, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. "I didn't know about Lily until last week. I couldn't tell you about someone I didn't know existed," but Tyler was beyond listening. With the emotional logic of a child, he had connected his father's secrecy with abandonment, with replacement, with loss. "I hate her," he declared, pointing at Lily, whose celebration had faltered, her smile fading as she sensed the tension. "And I hate you too." This last declaration was aimed at his father before Tyler ran from the room, leaving a wake of stunned silence behind him. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of building bridges while navigating the treacherous waters of blended family dynamics. Jack spent extra time with Tyler, reassuring him through both words and actions that his place in his father's heart was secure. "Having Lily in our lives doesn't mean I love you any less," he explained one evening as they worked together on Tyler's science project, a model of a solar-powered engine. "Love doesn't work that way. It grows to include more people." Tyler had continued adjusting wires without looking up, but his voice had lost some of its earlier hostility when he asked, "Did you love her mom more than mine?" Jack had set down his tools then, giving his full attention to the question. "I loved your mother very much," he said honestly. "What happened with Olivia was different. We barely knew each other. But I'm glad it happened, because it gave the world Lily. Just like I'm grateful every day that your mom and I had you." Tyler had nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer, and they had returned to their work in companionable silence. It wasn't acceptance yet, but it was a beginning. Olivia, meanwhile, was confronting her own challenges. Her carefully ordered world, built on control and predictability, had been upended by Jack's presence. Her colleagues had noticed her distraction, her assistant questioning the sudden changes to her previously rigid schedule. "Is everything all right, Miss Morgan?" he had asked after she rescheduled a major investor meeting to attend Lily's school science fair, something the old Olivia would never have done. "Everything's fine," she had replied automatically, before pausing and adding more honestly, "Actually, things are changing. In a good way, I think." It was true. Watching Lily blossom under Jack's attention, seeing her daughter's natural aptitude for mechanical things being nurtured by someone who understood that passion, these were unexpected gifts. But they came with complications. Her friends had raised eyebrows when she mentioned Jack was a mechanic. "A mechanic?" One had repeated incredulously over lunch. "Olivia, you could have any man in the city. Why complicate your life with someone so different?" She had no answer then, but later, watching Jack patiently explain to Lily how an engine worked, his hands gentle as they guided her smaller ones, Olivia had thought perhaps the question wasn't why, but why not? The first major crisis came when Jack brought Lily to his garage after school one day. He had cleared it with Olivia, who had reluctantly agreed after Lily's persistent pleading. Jack had carefully supervised, ensuring Lily wore appropriate safety gear as he showed her the basics of automobile maintenance. The little girl had been in heaven, absorbing information like a sponge and proudly identifying different tools before Jack even asked for them. When Olivia arrived to pick her up, however, her carefully neutral expression had cracked at the sight of her daughter in overalls, smudges of grease on her cheeks, chattering excitedly about torque and horsepower. "This isn't what we agreed to," she had said quietly to Jack as Lily gathered her things. "I said she could visit, not become a junior mechanic." Jack had bristled at her tone. She enjoyed herself and learned something practical. What's the problem? The underlying issue, unspoken but understood, was class. Olivia's vision for her daughter included Ivy League schools and executive boardrooms, not garages and coveralls. "There's nothing wrong with knowing how things work," Jack had continued, his voice hardening. "Or are you afraid she'll end up like me instead of you?" The argument had escalated from there, with old insecurities and new fears colliding in a perfect storm of parental anxiety. Neither noticed Tyler and Lily watching from the doorway, their earlier animosity temporarily forgotten in the face of adult conflict. It was Tyler who ultimately began building the bridge between the families. At school, he had witnessed another boy teasing Lily about her grease monkey daddy, a term the child had clearly picked up from his own parents. Despite his complicated feelings about his new sister, Tyler's sense of family loyalty had kicked in. Her dad is a mechanical engineer with patents. He had corrected the bully, stepping between him and Lily. And he could fix your dad's cheap car with his eyes closed. The incident had resulted in a meeting with the school counselor, but it had also created a shift in Tyler's relationship with Lily. The little girl had looked at him with shining eyes afterward, declaring him her hero brother. Something in Tyler's heart had softened at those words. That evening, he had grudgingly shown Lily his collection of robot kits, and to his surprise, she had understood the complex assembly instructions immediately. "You're pretty smart," he had admitted reluctantly. For a girl. Lily had smiled, accepting this backhanded compliment with grace beyond her years. "You're pretty nice," she had replied. "For a brother I just met." Jack and Olivia witnessed this tentative friendship blooming and found themselves drawn into its orbit. The school science fair became a turning point when Tyler and Lily decided to partner on a project, an environmentally friendly engine model that combined Tyler's technical knowledge with Lily's surprisingly artistic design sensibilities. The adults found themselves spending evenings together helping with the project, their earlier argument fading in the face of their children's collaboration. One night, after the children had gone to bed, exhausted from their work, Jack and Olivia found themselves alone with cups of coffee at her kitchen table. "I never thought my life would take this turn," Olivia admitted, her usual polish softened by fatigue and something like contentment. "I had everything planned out so carefully." Jack smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. "Life has a way of rearranging our careful plans," he observed, "sometimes for the better." Their eyes met over the steam of their mugs, and for a moment, the vast differences between their worlds seemed less important than the connections they were building. Their growing closeness was tested, however, when Jack received an unexpected job offer. One of the judges at the science fair, impressed by the innovative design of the children's project, had inquired about the adult help they'd received. Learning about Jack's background in engineering, he had offered him a consulting position with a prestigious firm, an opportunity to return to his former career while maintaining his garage. It was a chance at greater financial stability, at bridging the gap between his world and Olivia's. But it came with complications: occasional travel, time away from Tyler, and a disruption to the routine they had carefully established. "Would you take it?" Olivia had asked when Jack told her about the offer. Her voice was carefully neutral, but he could sense the layers beneath her question: concern for how it might affect their delicate family balance, hope for what it might mean for their future, fear of how it might change things between them. Jack had considered the question carefully. "It would mean more security for Tyler," he acknowledged. "But I'd want to keep the garage too. It keeps me grounded." What he didn't say, what he couldn't yet put into words, was that it might also mean he could offer Lily more of what she was accustomed to, that he could begin to feel like he belonged in their world as much as they were beginning to belong in his. Just as they were navigating this potential change, new complications arose. Jack's mother returned from an extended stay with her sister, bringing with her all the protective instincts of a woman who had watched her son struggle through grief and single parenthood. "So you have another child?" she had asked bluntly during her first dinner with Tyler, Jack, Lily, and Olivia. "With a woman you barely knew?" Her disapproval had been palpable, her concerns practical and pointed. "And now she wants you in their lives, after all these years? What about Tyler? What about the stability you've worked so hard to create?" Simultaneously, Olivia faced pressure from her own circles. Her mentor and chairman of the board had taken her aside after a meeting. "There's talk, Olivia," he had said carefully, "about your domestic situation. The Hampton merger is sensitive. We can't afford any complications." The unspoken message was clear. A CEO with a messy personal life was a liability. These external pressures strained the fragile bonds they had been building, creating doubts where certainty had begun to grow. The consulting position offered to Jack included a complication neither had initially considered: the possibility of relocation to the firm's headquarters in another state. It was presented as optional, something to consider for the future, but the mere suggestion sent ripples of anxiety through their newly formed family unit. Olivia, too, was being courted for a position that would significantly advance her career, but require frequent international travel. As the adults grappled with these decisions, trying to balance professional opportunities with personal connections, the children sensed the tension. One evening, Tyler overheard Jack discussing the consulting job on the phone, catching phrases like relocation package and temporary housing. Panicked at the thought of moving away from the stability he had finally found, including, to his own surprise, his new relationship with Lily, Tyler had sought out his sister. They had huddled together in Lily's elaborately decorated bedroom, a stark contrast to Tyler's practical space, and formulated a plan. Together, they created what they solemnly titled a family petition, listing reasons why they should all stay together. Tyler had written with surprising eloquence about finally having a sister who understood his interest in mechanics, while Lily had contributed heartfelt paragraphs about having a father and brother after years of wondering about her missing family. The document, illustrated with Lily's colorful drawings of the four of them together, had been left strategically on Olivia's desk where both adults would find it. The discovery of this childish but profound document had been a turning point. Jack and Olivia, reading through the carefully printed pages together, had found themselves deeply moved by their children's perspective. "Out of the mouths of babes," Jack had murmured, his finger tracing a drawing of 4 stick figures holding hands. Olivia had nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "We've been making this so complicated," she acknowledged, "thinking about our differences, our separate lives. But they see it so simply." That evening had led to honest conversations about priorities, about what truly mattered. Jack had realized that no career opportunity was worth distancing himself from the family connections he was building, while Olivia had acknowledged that her relentless pursuit of professional advancement had sometimes come at the cost of personal fulfillment. Together, they had negotiated compromises with their respective professional opportunities, Jack arranging to consult remotely, with only occasional travel, Olivia delegating more international responsibilities to allow herself to remain primarily local. These weren't sacrifices but realignments, adjustments to accommodate the new center of gravity their unexpected family had created. The true test of their growing bond came unexpectedly one ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Lily had been at school when she developed a severe allergic reaction to something in the cafeteria lunch, a condition neither Jack nor Olivia had known she had. The school had called Olivia first, but she had been in the middle of a crucial negotiation across town. Without hesitation, she had called Jack. "Lily's having some kind of allergic reaction," she had explained, her voice tight with fear. "I can't get there for at least 45 minutes." Jack had dropped everything, racing to the school where he found Lily in the nurse's office, her face swollen and breathing labored. He had acted with calm efficiency, getting her to the hospital where doctors had quickly administered treatment. By the time Olivia arrived, breathless and terrified, Lily was already improving, sitting up in bed with Jack, reading to her from a mechanics magazine he'd found in the waiting room. The sight of them together, her daughter's small hand tucked trustingly in Jack's larger one, her face turned toward him with complete confidence in his protection, had struck Olivia with a force she hadn't expected. This was what family meant. Being there when it mattered, without question or hesitation. That night, after Lily had been discharged with an EpiPen and a list of foods to avoid, the four of them had gathered at Olivia's apartment. Tyler had been unusually solicitous of his sister, showing her his latest robot design to distract her from the day's trauma. Jack had stayed late, helping Olivia research allergies and safety measures, neither of them wanting to acknowledge the deeper current that had been revealed by the day's events. As he prepared to leave, Olivia had walked him to the door, both of them pausing in the quiet hallway. "Thank you," she had said simply. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." Jack had shaken his head. "You don't need to thank me for taking care of my daughter," he had replied, the words sounding natural, right? Olivia had nodded, suddenly unable to find words for the emotions swirling within her. Before she could second-guess herself, she had leaned forward and kissed him, not the passionate encounter of their past, but something new, something built on shared concern and growing trust. "Stay," she had whispered against his lips, and he had. The following months saw the emergence of new traditions and routines. Sunday dinners alternated between Jack's cozy apartment and Olivia's sleek penthouse, the contrast between their homes becoming a source of enrichment rather than division. Tyler discovered a love for the piano after Olivia arranged lessons, while Lily developed increasing confidence in mechanical projects under Jack's guidance. School mornings became a carefully choreographed dance, with Jack often picking up both children so Olivia could attend early meetings, and Olivia handling afternoon activities when Jack needed to focus on the garage. They weren't living together. Both agreed that would be too much change too quickly for the children, but they were building a life together, one day at a time. Jack's mother, initially skeptical, had been won over by Lily's earnest questions about Tyler as a baby and her genuine interest in family stories. Olivia's board members, seeing her renewed energy and focus, had stopped questioning her personal choices. The worlds that had seemed so impossibly different were finding ways to mesh, to complement rather than contradict each other. 6 months after Lily's impulsive cry of "Daddy" had upended all their lives, the four of them gathered for Tyler's elementary school graduation. Jack sat proudly as his son received an award for excellence in science, while Olivia beamed beside him, every bit as invested in Tyler's achievement as she was in Lily's. The children, once strangers, now moved with the easy familiarity of siblings, whispering secrets and sharing private jokes. After the ceremony, as they walked together toward the parking lot, Jack and Tyler leading the way, Olivia and Lily following closely behind, an acquaintance of Olivia's had approached. "Is that your family?" the woman had asked, gesturing toward Jack and the children. Olivia had paused, considering the question with its many layers of meaning. "Yes," she had answered simply. "Yes, they are." The response had felt right, true in a way that transcended conventional definitions and expectations. Family, they were all learning, wasn't defined by matching DNA or shared addresses or similar backgrounds. It was built in Sunday dinners and science projects, in arguments resolved and compromises reached, in the thousand small moments of choosing to stay connected despite differences and difficulties. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Jack and Olivia stood on her balcony overlooking the city lights. "If someone had told me a year ago that this would be my life," Olivia mused, "I would have said they were crazy." Jack smiled, his shoulder brushing against hers in the comfortable way they had developed. "Life is full of surprises," he agreed, "some better than others." There was a question in his eyes as he looked at her, a possibility neither had been ready to acknowledge until now. Olivia smiled back, the carefully constructed walls of her previous life continuing to soften in his presence. "My assistant still hasn't returned to work," she said, changing the subject but not really. "His family emergency turned into a career change. He's opening a bakery." Jack laughed, understanding the reference to the twist of fate that had brought them together. "Sometimes a detour leads exactly where you're meant to go," he replied. They had discussed moving in together, finding a new place that would be theirs rather than his or hers. The children were enthusiastic, already planning shared spaces and combined toy collections. But for now, this in-between time had its own sweetness, the anticipation of further integration, the careful building of something that would last. Jack had accepted the consulting position on his own terms, working primarily from his garage with only occasional travel to the firm's headquarters. Olivia had restructured her executive role to allow for more flexibility, delegating tasks she once would have insisted on handling personally. These weren't compromises, but evolutions, adjustments that reflected their changing priorities. Their relationship, too, was evolving. The initial attraction that had sparked between them in Chicago all those years ago now deepened by shared purpose, by the daily work of parenting together, by the growing understanding of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. As they stood together in the gentle evening breeze, they both knew they were still at the beginning of their journey, still learning, still adjusting, still discovering what this unexpected family could become. But the path ahead, once so uncertain, now held promise rather than trepidation. In the rooms behind them, their children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that some accidents of fate turn out to be the greatest of gifts. And sometimes, the voice of a child calling out in recognition can be the start of a story no one expected but everyone needed. A reminder that families aren't always formed according to plan, but can be all the stronger for the challenges that bring them together. For Jack and Olivia, for Tyler and Lily, the road ahead would have its bumps and turns, its moments of doubt and disagreement. But they would travel it together, 4 lives that had intersected by chance but continued by choice, building day by day the most important engineering project of all, a family, uniquely their own.